A very good morning to everyone. In this video, we will study another topic of lesson reproduction in plants, that is sexual reproduction in plants. So let's begin it. Sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is occur by the formation of seeds. In flowering plants, flowers are the reproductive organs and the most attractive parts of the plant. Flowers contain male reproductive organs, that is stamen, and female reproductive organs, that is pistil, for the production of male and female gametes respectively. These gametes fuse together to form a zygote which develops into the embryo of the seed. Now let's study the different parts of the flower individually. A complete flower is made up of 4 whorls on it. These are sepals, petals, stamens and pistil. You can see all these 4 parts in the given picture. Now let's study about sepals. Sepals make the outermost whorl of a flower and are green in color. The sepals collectively form calyx. The function of sepals is to protect the inner parts of the flower during its initial stages of growth when it is in the form of a bird. Petals. Petals make the second whorl of a flower. Petals are the colorful part of the flower. Petals can be of different colors. Petals collectively form corolla. The main function of petals is to attract the insects and birds which help in pollination. Stamens. Stamens make the third whorl of a flower. Stamen is the male reproductive organ of a plant. It consists of 2 parts, filament and anther. Both the parts you can see in given picture. Filament is a tubular structure. You can see it. It is green in color. Anther is a knob-like structure containing pollen sacs filled with pollen grains. Anther basically consists pollen grains. Pollen grains act as the male gametes or the male reproductive cells. What are gametes? Gametes are the reproductive cells that unite during the fertilization to form zygote. Pistil. Pistil is the centrally located female reproductive part of a flower. It is made up of stigma, style and the ovary. You can see all 3 parts in given picture. Stigma is the sticky tip of the pistil which receives pollen grains from the anther through the process of pollination. So basically stigma receives the pollen grain from the anther. Style. Style is a long tubular structure which connects stigma to the ovary and provide passage to the pollen tube. Third part is ovary. Ovary is the swollen basal part of the pistil which contains female gametes, that is ovules. So this is all about the different parts of the flower. Types of flowers. According to their reproductive walls, flowers are classified into two types. One is unisexual flower, second is bisexual flower. Unisexual flower, the flower which contains either only the pistil or only the stamens, is called unisexual flowers. Uni means one. So in case of unisexual flower, only one part, either pistil or stamen, is present, hence the name given unisexual flower. Example of unisexual flower is papaya, corn and cucumber. Bisexual flower, the flower which contain both stamen and pistil is called bisexual flower. In bisexual flower, both stamen and pistil is present, hence the name given bisexual, as bi means two. Example of bisexual is mustard, rose and petunia. This is all about types of flower. Now let's study what is pollination. The transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the pistil is called pollination. Pollination is of two types, self-pollination and cross-pollination. What is self-pollination? The transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower is called self-pollination. When the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma take place in same flower, this is called self-pollination, and self-pollination take place in bisexual plants. You can see the picture of self-pollination. Now, what is cross-pollination? Cross-pollination is the transfer of the pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower of the same kind or another plant of the same kind. Cross-pollination takes place in both bisexual as well as unisexual plants. So this is about self and cross-pollination. Now let's study who help in the process of cross-pollination. The cross-pollination requires some external agents to carry the pollen grains from one flower to another. These agents are insects, birds, wind and water. They are called pollinating agents or agents of pollination. Insects, birds, wind and water help in the process of cross-pollination. They transfer the pollen grains from one flower to another. So this is about agents of pollination. Now let's study what is fertilization. Fertilization is the fusion of male gametes, that is pollens, with the female gametes, that is ovum, in the ovules. So fertilization is the fusion of male and female gametes. Let's study how it occurs. When the pollen grains gets transferred to the stigma of the same or some other flower of the same kind, then stigma of the flower secretes a sugar containing liquid. The pollen grains respond to this liquid and start growing. After pollination, a thin tube is sent out into the pistil from the pollen grains called the pollen tube. You can see it in given picture that the pollen grains germinate into a pollen tube. The pollen tube carrying the male cells grow in the size through style to reach the female ovule in the ovary. With the help of style, male cells reaches to the ovule in the ovary. As it reaches the ovule, the tip of the tube opens and releases male gametes to fertilize the female ovule to form the zygote. So after the fertilization, zygote is formed. What is zygote? Zygote is a fertilized cell formed by the fusion of male and female gamete. After the process of fertilization, all the parts of flower, sepals, petals, stamen and pistil usually fall off. Ovary persists and then ripens to form a fruit. Fruit is a ripened ovary. The seeds develop from the ovules. The seeds contain an embryo enclosed in a protective seed coat. So after fertilization, ovary gets converted into fruit and ovules gets converted into seeds. So this is all about the topic fertilization. What is seed dispersal? The scattering of seeds by different agents like water, animals, birds, wind, or insects over a large area is called seed dispersal. Seed dispersal is basically scattering of seeds over a large area. Necessity of seeds dispersal. A plant produces a large number of seeds that grow into new plants. To grow, seeds require enough space, sunlight, minerals, and water to germinate. If the seeds get scattered only around the plant, they will not be able to grow since each one of them compete for these factors and will not be able to develop into a healthy plant. Therefore, it is necessary to get seeds dispersed for proper germination and growth. There are different agents which help in dispersal of seeds. They are wind, water, birds, animals, and self-explosion. Let's study first dispersal by water. Many aquatic plants and plants that live near water have seeds that can float and are carried by water. For example, coconut seed becomes light as it ripens and dries. This enables it to get dispersed by floating water. The lotus fruit is also dispersed by water as it is spongy and can float easily. So, coconut and lotus seeds are dispersed by water. Dispersal by wind. The seeds that are light in weight and have hairy structures, these are blown away by wind to far distances. Examples are dandelion and drumsticks. Dispersal by animals. Birds and other animals eat the fleshy fruits such as guava and tomato. The fruit is digested by the animals, but the seeds pass through the digestive tract and are dropped in other locations. Some animals, like squirrel, bury seeds and help in the dispersal by storing nuts in their burrows under the soil. When the condition becomes favorable, these seeds germinate to give rise to new plants. This is how birds and animals help in dispersal of seeds. Dispersal by animals. Animals often serve as seed carriers. Some seeds, like xanthium, have hook-like structures with which they get stuck onto the body of animals or on the clothes of human beings moving to different places. They then get dispersed to distant places. The given picture is of xanthium and it has a hook, you can see in the given picture, and by which it gets stuck onto the body of animals or on the clothes of human beings. This is how xanthium seed dispersed. Sometimes fruits like peas and balsam burst open forcibly after drying. When they are exposed to the environment, the force with which they burst off scatters the seed in all directions. So this is how seeds dispersed by different agents. Thank you, students.